Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everything Educator Related. I know I have been gone for a while, but recently the subscriptions I've been getting, the comments on my videos I've been getting has been encouraging me to come back to make videos for you all. So thank you very much for that. So today we're going to talk about FTCE GK Reading Competency 1. So I want to get into the competencies with you because it's very important to know what you're going to get on the exam, which is what the competency does. The competencies goes through what you need to know in order to be successful at the exam. So in this video, we're going to go through competency 1. In my other videos, if you're interested in me making videos of the other competencies, please let me know. So this will be part 1, which is competency 1. So please go ahead and check out my other videos. Now for this video, I talked about if you're going to take the math, English and essay portion of the general knowledge exam soon, please be sure to check out this video where I talked about the different resources you can use to study from. Also, specifically for the GKE reading, I talked about reading resources in this video. And then for this video, I talked about some in-person strategies you can use when you're in the exam. So this will help you when you actually go to take the exam. So I talked about some strategies you can use, as I said before. For this one, I basically just highlighted 2 apps you can use on the go. So if you're on the road or just on the go, you can practice some passages in your free time. So please be sure to check out these videos. Please don't forget to like, comment and share, and most importantly subscribe if you want to see more of this content. Thank you for all who have already subscribed, but if you are new to this channel, please go ahead and click the subscription button to encourage me to continue making more videos. So thank you very much for subscribing. Now let's get into the video. Now, as I said, we're going to go through competency 1, and competency 1 is knowledge of key ideas and details based on text selections. Now, competency 1 has eight competencies, or in other words, 8 things that you need to know. So as I said, by knowing the competency, you are studying or you're looking over what you need to know for the exam. Now, this is only a video to go through the basics with you. So it's going to help you to know what a conclusion is, what a textual evidence is, what is a inference, I should say. Sorry about that. Now, number 1, you should identify textual evidence to support conclusions drawn from text. Number 2, you're supposed to identify explicit meanings and details within text. Number 3, determine inferences and conclusions based on textual evidence. Number 4, discriminate among inferences, conclusions, and assumptions based on textual evidence. Number 5, determine and analyze the development of central ideas or themes from one or more texts. Number 6, summarize one or more texts using key supporting ideas and details. Number 7, determine how and why specific individual events and ideas develop based on textual evidence. And the last one is determine the cause and effect relationships among individuals, events, and ideas based on textual evidence. So as I said before, I'm just going to give an overview of what you might see on the exam. So, what is knowledge of key ideas and details based on text selections? Key ideas and details is all about knowing what the text is saying or what the text is about. It is exploring what the author wants you to know. So what this competency is about is knowing what the author is saying in the text. So just like when you go to write an essay, view the reading exam as somebody writing an essay. So just like how you would write an essay, you're going to ensure that you have your first paragraph, your body paragraphs, your concluded paragraph, your thesis statement. View the passage on a whole as that. A lot of people might view reading as difficult. I used to do that. But when I realized that it is somebody writing an essay, that's when I realized, and I said, wait, I write essays all the time. So when I'm reading a passage, it's like reading somebody else's essay, right? So it's all about reading to figure out what that person wants me to know. So as I said before, we're going to go into textual evidence. So competency 1 was identify textual evidence to support conclusions drawn from text. So once again, we're identifying textual evidence to support conclusions drawn from text. So the textual evidence is going to support the conclusion that is being drawn from the text. So what is textual evidence? So like you, when you are writing an essay, you have to put evidence in your writing to back up what you're saying, right? So it is the same for the passages in the exam. The author includes evidence to help them get their point across. And this textual evidence take the form of facts and statistics, expert testimony, personal experience and anecdote, the word for instance, or analogies. So analogies are just comparisons. So for example, if I say life is like a roller coaster, it has ups and downs. I'm comparing life with roller coasters because roller coaster go up and down, and so does life. Sometimes you have good days and you have bad days. So look at textual evidence as you telling me something, but you have information to back up what you're saying to me. So that's the same with the essay. You're going to read key details and you're going to have evidence or supporting details that back up what the author is trying to say to you. Now, first, how do you locate the textual evidence? So first you want to identify the topic sentence or main idea of the paragraph, right? In other words, what it is saying. So once you can point out the main idea, then you know the evidence will follow, right? So if once the author gives you the main idea, they're gonna have evidence that follow those ideas, the main idea, or they're gonna have supporting details to back up what they are saying. So let's read this paragraph together. Does watching violence on TV make people more prone to violence themselves? Obviously, TV violence has some negative effects. So I am reading this and I'm saying to myself, it seems like this paragraph is going to be about violence on TV. And it is clear that the author believes that violence on TV, in other words, has negative effects. Because as you can see here, the keyword obviously. So it's like me and you having a conversation, and I'm saying, I asked you, does watching violence on TV make people more prone to violence themselves? And then you would reply and say, obviously, TV violence has some negative effects. So then and there, you see that the author agrees that watching violence on TV makes people more prone to violence. In other words, TV violence has some negative effects. The author believes that TV violence has some negative effects, right? And then they go ahead to back up, the author go ahead to back up, obviously TV violence has some negative effects with one study found that heavy TV watchers are more fearful of others. They try to protect themselves with guns, alarm systems, and security locks on doors. In the same study, it was found that heavy TV watchers are less upset about real life violence than are non TV watchers. All of the violence they see on TV makes them less sensitive to the real thing. A recent study also found that TV violence increases aggressive behavior in kids and makes them more likely to select toy guns rather than other kinds of toys. So we can see that the part that says one study and it goes ahead with the other words, it is the evidence. That is the textual evidence to back up. Obviously, TV violence has some negative effects. So we can see here that the reason why the author believes that TV violence has some negative effects is because the study found that heavy TV watchers are more fearful of others. Heavy TV watchers are less upset about real life violence than are non TV watchers, and all of the violence they see, no, not that one. Recent study also found that TV violence increases aggressive behavior in kids. So this is what backs up the statement that TV violence has some negative effects. So the topic of this passage would be TV violence. That's what we are talking about. Because remember, you're going to ask yourself, what is this passage about? Clearly, the passage is about TV violence and if a person is affected when they watch violence on TV. So the main idea is, what is the author trying to get across? So take a minute to yourself. What do you think the author is trying to get across? Keep in mind, we saw obviously TV violence has some negative effects. So that's what the author is trying to get across, that TV violence has some negative effects. And he backs up that claim with evidence. So because every information that followed supported this point, TV watchers are more fearful of others. TV violence increases aggressive behavior in kids. So that's the textual evidence. So one study found that heavy TV watchers are more fearful of others. A recent study also found that TV violence increases aggressive behavior in kids. So these are the two textual evidence that backs up the author saying, obviously TV violence has some negative effects. So I really hope you got the point of what I'm saying. So let's move on to the other one. So the other competency is identify explicit meaning and details within text. Now, what is explicit meaning? Explicit meaning and details within a text is information in the text that is clearly stated and easily understandable to the reader or listener. So in other words, explicit meaning is something that you can find in the text. It's clear, it's obvious, once you read it, it's there. Okay, so some type of questions that they will ask on the exam that has to do with identifying explicit meanings and details within the text is according to the passage. So this is a popular one. So if you go to your questions and it says, according to the passage, what did Jill and Mike do at the party? So you would go back to where the passage talks about Jill and what was the name I said? Mike? Yes. You go back to the paragraph that talks about Jill and Mike, and you will see the answer right there because it's an explicit type of question. It's an explicit mean. It has explicit meaning, meaning it can be found in the text. So once you go directly back to the paragraph, you're going to find it. Another question stem that gives you clues to if it's a explicit information question is if it says the passage states that or the author indicates that. So these are three question stems you can use to know whether the question is an explicit type of question, because it says according to this passage, the passage states, the author indicates. You can see that you can clearly find it in the passage. So you just have to go back in the passage and try to find it. So the only way the answer choices would be wrong. So right now we're looking at the answer choices, right? So the only way it would be wrong is that the information that was in the passage is if the information was in the passage but it is unrelated to the question being asked, it would be considered wrong. So for example, we're talking about Jill and Mike. So we know that Jill and Mike went to a party. But if one of the question options are, okay, so if it asks, where did Jill and Mike go to party? And the passage said they went to Greenville, you would not take the answer choice that says Jill and Mike like to go partying with their friends, because clearly the question didn't ask you about friends. It asked where they went to party. So I hope I made that clear. So if the answer choice is unrelated to the question being asked, then it's automatically wrong. So choices that sound good or make sense, but they aren't supported by the passage. As I said, textual evidence. Always ensure that your answer choice that you choose can be backed up by evidence in the passage. So the third one, determine inferences and conclusions based on text selections, right? Once again, you're determining inferences on and conclusions based on text selections. Now, inferences are implicit. So remember, we just looked at explicit and we said that explicit can be found clearly in the passage. However, implicit cannot be found. You have to guess it. So meaning information is not explicitly stated, you will need to look for clues in the text. So it is not explicitly stated. Rather, you have to look for clues to back up that inference, right? So when you infer that something has happened, you do not see, hear, feel, smell, or taste the actual event. But from what you know, it makes sense to think that it has happened. So you're taking what they already gave you in the text plus your experience to make an inference. So for example, if I am walking past my neighbor's house and I smell the aroma of food, then I can infer that they're cooking without actually looking into their house to know they're cooking, right? So this is an inference I made because I walked past a neighbor's house, I smelled the aroma of the food, but I can go ahead and infer that they were cooking because, you know, based on the smell, I can tell. So based on my experience that, cooking equals smell equal food. So knowing, so my experience of knowing that when you cook, you can smell the food. Plus, you know, walking past, maybe I hear the pots and stuff or whatever. Then I can infer that they are cooking. So that's what an inference is. Okay, so now we're going to practice a passage. So I'm going to go ahead and read the passage now. The history of Greece goes back to the time when people did not know how to write and kept no record of what was happening around them, right? So keep in mind, these people, they did not know how to write and they did not keep record of what was happening, right? So for a long time, the stories told by parents to their children were the only information had which could be had about the country and its former inhabitants. So stories told by parents to their children were only information that were about the country and its inhabitants. And these stories, slightly changed by every new teller, grew more and more extraordinary as time passed. So you're telling me now that they had no record because they did not know how to write. However, the stories were told by parents, right? And each time these stories were changed by word of mouth, by every new teller. So at last they were so changed that no one could tell where the truth ended and fancy began. The beginning of the Greek history is therefore like a fairy tale, and while much of it cannot, of course, be true, it is the only information we have about early Greeks. So then and there, I can infer that these were fairy tales because every time they were changed, and we do not know if it is true or not. So based on this passage, what can readers infer about fairy tales, right? So what can we infer about fairy tales? So these are the possible answers. They are commonly told at bedtime. They contain unbelievable events. They are realistic, and they are only written in Greek. Okay, so off the bat, we know that D is wrong because they said that the people did not know how to write. So there's no way they're going only written in Greek because the people did not know how to write. They are commonly told at bedtime. There's nothing that influenced me to think that um the stories were told at bedtime because there is nothing mentioned about bedtime here. So that's automatically out. They are realistic. We do not know if they are realistic or not because the passage says it's slightly changed by every new teller. So we don't even know if it's real or not. So that's out. So the right answer would be they contain unbelievable events because clearly the passage say it is slightly changed by every new teller, grew more and more extraordinary as time passed, and no one could tell where the truth ended and fancy began. And the Greek story is therefore like a fairy tale. So we can agree that they contain unbelievable events, right? So the best answer is they contain unbelievable events. The author compares the story of Greek history to fairy tales, saying that the truth was slightly changed from generation to generation until the real history has changed so much that it is untrue. Thus, we can infer that the events in fairy tales are similarly unbelievable, making the answer choice they are realistic incorrect. The other answer choices they are commonly told at bedtime and they are only written in Greek have no basis in this passage. So here's another one. John Scott and Philip Lanes walked together down a great boulevard of Paris. So these are two people walking down Paris, the boulevard of Paris. The young American's heart was filled with grief and anger. The Frenchman felt the same grief, but mingled with it was a fierce, burning passion so deep and bitter that it took a much stronger word than anger to describe it. So it seemed like one was American, he was filled with grief and angry, and the other one was Frenchman. He was filled with the same grief, but it seems like he was angrier. If we're gonna go deep into it, because it says words word than anger to describe it. Much stronger word than anger to describe it. So I guess he's very, very angry. About what though? So this is me continuing now. Both had heard that morning the mutter of cannon on the horizon, and they knew the German conquerors were advancing. So I guess once you see the word canon, we can infer that it is a war that is going on, and the Germans are would be more powerful because um, they are always advancing, as the passage says. Nothing had stopped them. The metal and masonry of the defenses at Liege, I don't know how to pronounce that word, had crumbled before their huge guns like china breaking under stone. So, clearly, I guess their country, the metal and masonry of the defense, defense that they had up has been crumbled um, with the Germans' huge guns like china breaking under stone, right? So it go ahead and said the giant shells had scooped out the forts at, I don't know to pronounce that word, Maubeuge the untakeable, as if they had mere eggshells, and the mighty Teutonic host came on almost without a check. So here I can see that it's saying that a fort that is usually untakeable has been eggshell. That means it has been broken, right? So that's what I got from it. So clearly the Germans is winning here. So the question said, what can we infer about the setting of the story? So we're inferring or guessing based on our experience and what the passage has given us about the setting of the story, right? Keep in mind, they are walking down Great Boulevard. They are filled with grief and anger, and they heard the same morning the mutter of the cannon, right? And they knew the Germans were advancing as they are always advancing, right? So it says the story takes place after the war is over. The story takes place during, in the future. The story takes place during a war. The story takes place during peacetime. There's no way the story should be taking place during peacetime. There's no way the story takes place during in the future. It has to be the story takes place after the war is over, or the story takes place during a war. It's clear to see that the story is taking place during a war because current events show that just this morning they heard the cannon and they are walking together down the boulevard of Paris, feeling angry and filled with grief. So it is obvious that it's a recent event. So the story is obviously taking place during a war. So we can infer this based on the details in the passage, including words like cannons, German conquerors, gun shells, and forts. There are no details that this story would take place in the future. There is a strong support that the story is taking place during a war and not after it or during peacetime. We know this because of the line. Both had heard that morning the mutter of cannon on the horizon. For those reasons, the best choice is the story takes place during a war. Okay, so now we're going to go deeper into inference. So we're going to be using inference to determine vocabulary meaning. I'm going to take you to now this website. I found that incorporates what an inference is and what a conclusion is, right? On your own time, I will leave the link in the description on where you can find this specific website, but it talks about inferences and conclusions. So basically, as I was saying about inferences, drawing conclusions refer to information that is implied or inferred. Keep in mind, inferred or implied is something that is not explicitly stated. So this means that the information is never clearly stated. So joint conclusions refer to information that is never clearly stated. So writers often tell you more than they say directly. They give you hints or clues that help you read between the lines, right? So when you infer, you go beyond the surface details to see other meanings that the details suggest or imply, which is not stated. So when the meaning of words are not stated clearly in the context of the text, they may be implied, that is, suggested or hinted at. So when meanings are implied, you may infer them, right? So inference is just a big word that means a conclusion or judgment. If you infer that something has happened, you do not see, hear, feel, smell, or taste the actual event. But from what you know, it makes sense to think that it has happened. You make inferences every day. Most of the time, you do so without thinking, right? So, for example, you hear screeching tires, then a loud crash and breaking glass. You see nothing, but you infer that there has been a car accident. We all know that sounds of screeching tires and a crash. We know that these sounds almost always mean a car accident. But there could be some other reason and therefore another explanation for the sound. Perhaps it was not an accident. Maybe an angry driver rammed a parked car. Or maybe someone played the sound of a car crash from a recording. So making inference means choosing the most likely explanation from facts at hand, right? So there are several ways to help you draw conclusions from what an author may be implying. So the following are descriptions of various ways to aid you in reaching a conclusion. So one way to help you reach a conclusion is by way of general sense. General sense is the meaning of a word may be implied by general sense of its context. So as the meaning of the word incarcerated is implied in the following sentence. Murderers are usually incarcerated for longer periods of time than robbers. You may infer the meaning of incarcerated by answering the question, what usually happens to those found guilty of murder or robbery? What have you inferred as the meaning of the word incarcerated? If you answer that they are locked up in jail, prison, or a I don't know how to pronounce that word, penitentiary, you correctly infer the meaning of incarcerated, right? Examples. So in other words, when you think about murders and robbers, the first, and you see something that says they are usually incarcerated for longer periods of time than robbers, you know that murderers are more dangerous than robbers, although you don't really know, but you get what I'm saying. Murderer mean they killed somebody, robber mean you just took what's not belonging to you. So clearly, if it says they are incarcerated for longer periods of time, it means that they have been locked up in jail or in prison. That's what it clearly means. That what's incarcerated would mean, because you're comparing a murderer with a robber, and it says for longer periods of time. So this is another example. You can read that on your own. But another way is by antonyms and contrast. So it says Ben is fearless, but his brother is timorous. So if you know that Ben is fearless, that means his brother is the opposite, right? So timorous, by answering the question, if Ben is fearless and Jim is very different from Ben with the regard to fear, then what would describe Jim? If you answered such word as timid or afraid or fearful, you infer the meaning of timorous. Timorous. Guys, excuse my pronunciations. I don't really know how to pronounce that. Yeah, so be careful of the meaning you infer. When a sentence contains an unfamiliar word, it is sometimes possible to infer the general meaning of the sentence without inferring the exact meaning of the unknown word, right? So yeah, so on your own time, you can read this again just to have a clear idea of, this is just a resource I found on the internet, right? So once again, we're using inference to figure out the meaning of vocabulary words. So I'm going to read this passage for you. So it says, as an adult, though my opinion of summer rain has changed, when you have to work every day, summer is not as merely and eagerly anticipated. The days run together, bleeding into each other so that they no longer seem like separate entities and instead feel like continuations of the same long day. Everything seems monotonous and dull, and ennui or listlessness kicks in, such as a mindset makes you cheer for anything new or different. I spend the winter dreaming of summer and the summer dreaming of winter. When summer comes, I complain about how hot it is, and then I look forward to the rain because the rain brings with it a cold front which offers a reprieve, admittedly one that is all too short from the torture of 100 degrees and humid days. Rainy days are still the worst days of the summer, but summer rain today means positively beautiful and considered cooler weather tomorrow. So if we look, the word that we're looking, the vocabulary word we're trying to use inference to figure out the meaning is reprieve, right? So if you look around it, it says, I spend winter dreaming of summer and summer dreaming of winter, right? When summer comes, now we're talking about summer, I complain how hot it is. And then I look forward to the rain. So I'm assuming this person is saying that the rain, when it is hot, he's looking forward to the rain, even though um rainy days are still worst days of the summer. When it's hot, he still looks forward for the rain because the rain brings a cold front. So we're looking at these words. Hot brings with it a cold front, which offers a reprieve, admittedly one that is too short. So what could be too short? Right? So let's look at the answer choices. As used in the final paragraph, the word reprieve most nearly means a permanent conclusion. Clearly, reprieve cannot mean a permanent conclusion because the word says here, admittedly, one that is all too short. So it could not be a permanent conclusion. The next one says a short continuation. So you would be saying with it bring a cold front which offers a short continuation. That does not make sense within itself, because if something is too short here, it says it's too short from the torture, we could not consider it as continuation. Then it says a higher level of pain. There's no way this could be pain because it is something the author is looking forward to, right? So there's no way pain could be included. So the answer is a temporary break. This makes more sense because it says the summer is hot and is looking forward to the rain for a break, for a temporary break from the heat, from the torture of 100 degrees and humid days. And you know that the word temporary means short. So it fits well right here because it says which offers a temporary break, admittedly one that is all too short. So a temporary break is short. So that would be the more proper solution to use in this case. Okay, so you can read this on your own. I'm going to give you some time to read it. It's basically saying the same thing I just said, but if you didn't understand what I was explaining, it breaks it down here. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to read it. Okay, so by now you should finish reading. So next we're going to look at discriminate among inferences, conclusions, and assumptions based on textual evidence. So as we said, an inference is using our background knowledge and what was given in the passage to make a deduction. A conclusion is using only facts from the passage to logically and accurately sum up the outcome or what the passage is saying, just like when you write a conclusion for an essay. So in other words, when you write an essay, at the last paragraph, you usually conclude your essay. So in other words, you're summing up what you want, what the main idea is. You're summing up the key details, that you're giving me a summary of what you're saying or what your passage is about. So that's what conclusion is. You're summing up everything. Assumption is something we accept as true in our heads based on what we have learned or experienced without any proof. So if I am going into work and I see a coworker coming out as I am going in, I can assume that the person is finished with work because they're going they're leaving with their stuff. So without asking them, are you done working for today? I can assume that they are done working because I see them leaving with their bags and everything. So here I am going to give you the chance to read. I'm not going to go over everything, but it's really good. It gives you the difference between a conclusion, assumption, an inference, sorry, and such. So I feel like this is very helpful. So be sure to check this out. But what I want to pinpoint here is this example, right? This example said, India has fought many wars with Pakistan and China. There are frequent skirmishes and tension even now on India's northern borders. The exact borderline is often challenged by the parties involved. Lack of properly demarcated, I don't know how to pronounce, border is also an issue with Bangladesh. So what can we conclude here? So we can so it says India has fought many wars with Pakistan and China. There are frequent tension even now on India's northern border. The exact borderline is often challenged by the parties involved. Lack of properly border is an issue with Bangladesh. So you can see that there's tension here. So we can conclude that relations between India, Pakistan, and India, China are probably not good. Or India, Pakistan, and India, China are enemies, at least on military front. An inference we can make is that, being that it says lack of demarcated border is also an issue with the Bangladesh. I'm sorry, guys. Inference can be unclear borders may lead to unhealthy relationships with neighbors. So once again, you can go through. I'm gonna put the link in the description, so be sure to check that out. Next, we're going to determine and analyze the development of central ideas or themes from one or more texts. So right here we're talking about central ideas and themes. So central ideas is not the topic of the text, rather it is what the text is mainly about. So it is the main point an author is making about a topic, the author's primary message. Sometimes the central idea is stated, but often it must be inferred. Whereas the theme is the passage that the writer wants to get across in his or her story. So for example, Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, the theme would be love, I should say. A lot of people have different, they would see that as different themes, but I see the theme as love. So when going through your passages, if you want to know, if you want to get an overall view of what the passage is about, it's nice to look at the first and the last paragraph, because the first paragraph introduces what the passage is going to be about, and the last paragraph concludes, or in other words, the concluding paragraph concludes what the passage is about. So it will sum up everything, allowing you to know what the main points were in the paragraph. So for example, let's read this together. Buying things today is so simple. Just enter a shop, say a bookstore, choose the desired book and pay for it. Long ago, before the invention of money, how did people trade? The most primitive way of exchange should be the bartender trade. In this form of transaction, people used goods to exchange for things they had in mind. For instance, if a person wanted a book, if person A wanted a book and he had a spare goat, he must look for someone who had the exact opposite. That is, someone, say person B, must have a spare book for a person A's choice and is also in need of a goat. Having found such a person, the problem does not end here. A big goat may not be worth only one book. Hence, person B may have to offer person A something else, like 5 chickens. However, he runs the risk of person A rejecting the offer as he may not need chickens. The above example clearly illustrates the inefficiency of barter trading. Many years later, the cumbersome barter trade finally gave way to the monetary form of exchange when the idea of money was invented. In the early days, almost anything could qualify as money: beads, shells, and fishing hooks. Then, in a region near Turkey, gold coins were used as money. In the beginning, each coin had a different denomination. It was only later, in about 700 BC, the king of Lydia, standardized the value of each coin and even printed his name on the coins. Monetary means of transaction at first beat the tradition's barter trade. However, as it went by, the thought of carrying a ponderous pouch of coins for shopping appeared not only troublesome but thieves attracting. Hence, the Greek and Roman traders who bought goods from people far away cities invented checks to solve the problem. Not only are paper checks easy to carry around, but they also discourage robbery, as these checks can only be used by the person whose name is printed on the notes. Following this idea, banks later issued notes in exchange for gold deposited with them. These banknotes can be used as cash. Finally, governments of today adopted the idea and began to print paper money, backed by gold for countries' use. Today, besides enjoying the convenience of using paper notes as the mode of exchange, technology has led man to invent other means of transaction too, like credits and cash cards. So, why I said to look at the first paragraph and the last paragraph, keep in mind, the first paragraph said buying things today is so simple. Just enter a shop, say a bookstore, choose the desired book and pay for it. Long ago, before the invention of money, how did people trade? So reading the first, you can see that it's going to talk about the history of buying things, right? It seems that this paragraph is all about purchasing, what money was like, buying, and all those stuff. Then you go to the last paragraph and it says, today, besides enjoying the convenience of using paper notes as the mode of exchange, technology has led men to invent other means of transaction, too, like the credit and cash cards. So by reading the first paragraph and the last paragraph, we can see that this passage is about the history of money, buying, what buying was like years ago, and how it is becoming simpler, as because look, it says buying things today is so simple, and then here it says technology has led man to invent other means of transaction too, like the credit and cash cards. So it's clear that this passage was about the history of money and how it has become convenient, and how there's no many different forms of buying, in other words. So that's the importance of reading the first and second paragraph. So let's read the summary now. The summary says, long ago, people bought things through bartender trade. However, the difficulty of having to look for a right partner and dividing the goods led to people to switch over to monetary transactions. At first, bead shells and fishing hooks were used as money. Near Turkey, gold coins with irregular denominations were used for trade. Later, king guides standardized the individual coin value. People soon found carrying coins around for shopping, troublesome, and thieves courting. Hence, merchants started to issue checks with names of users on them to discourage robbery. Following that, banks started to issue cash notes in return for gold deposited with them. Finally, adopting the idea, today government printed paper money backed by gold for the country's usage. So the summary has summarized the history of money and how it has changed over time. Okay, so now we're going to look at what summarizing is. So summarizing is shortening the words but not the meaning. So as I showed you here, this was a summary of the long paragraph that we just read. So that should give you an idea of what a summary is. So let's go to this file. On your own, please go ahead and read what this is saying. Okay, so the summary of this is ancient Greece 500 to 300 BC contributed to culture in the arts, sciences, and politics. Contributions include epic poems, myths about Greek gods, ideas from Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato, comedies and tragedies, the Parthenon, beautiful statues and types of columns. Other contributions are the Pythagorean theorem, Euclidean geometry, pi, pulleys, levers, measurement of the Earth and Sun, and a sun-centered solar system. Direct democracy also began in ancient Greece. So that is the summary. So yeah, so summary is all about shortening the words. It's all about shortening the words and not the meaning, right? So I had something else I wanted to share with you guys. Here are some helpful tips for when you're summarizing. First, you're going to ask yourself, what is the topic? Remember, the topic is a word or a phrase identifying what the reading section is about. Many times the topic is the title or headline, or it can be found in the first paragraph of a non-fiction reading selection. Right? For a fiction selection, the student may need to infer from I'm sorry guys, I lost track. The student may need to infer from details what the topic is, but usually it is stated. Now the student should identify the main idea. The main idea is not the same as the topic. The main idea is not the same as a topic. A topic is a word or phrase. A main idea is a statement. So from Charlotte's Web and early chapters, main idea might be Wilbur is lonely, so he searches for a friend. Or from an article about insects, a main idea might be an insect's body has 3 parts. The main idea might be found in the introduction, or the student might need to infer the main idea from the facts given. The student should highlight it in a highlight it and mark main idea next to it. Next, the student should divide the reading selection into sections. This is not the same thing as dividing a selection into paragraphs, but it might turn out that each section is an individual paragraph. Some section or subtopic extend over more than one paragraph. The paragraph of Wilbur asking the rat to play would be one section, and the Paragraphs of where we're asking the goose to play would be another section. The student could bracket a section in the margins or encircle all the paragraphs of one section with a single circle in the margin of each. So if there are important details, they should be highlighted or underlined. For example, if the reading selection's topic is ancient Greece and its main idea is Greece gave many contributions to world culture, then the student should highlight categories of contributions such as poetry, statues, buildings, etc. Whole sentences should not be highlighted, just important categories of details, depending on how long the summary should be. Most details should be skipped. Sometimes it helps to use arrows from the main idea to the supporting information that will be in the summary. Have the student draw arrows on the photo. Well, you're not going to draw any arrows, but now the student is ready to write a summary. So, you guys, that's how you summarize. Sorry for reading that long. This is what I'm showing here on the screen is not it. This is something else, but you get what I'm saying. So, yes, so now I'm going to go back to the presentation. And this is what we are going to talk about. So, determine the cause and effect relationships among individual events and ideas. So, in other words, cause and effect. Cause is why it happened, effect is what happened as a result, right? So, you're going to ask yourself, what events does the author describe in the selection? What causes are given for the events described in the selection? Which words and phrases did the author use to signal cause or effect relationships? Because, since, thus, so that, if, then, therefore, nevertheless, which led to, as a result of, then so. These are examples. So if you're reading your passage, if you want to figure out if it is a cause, you're going to see these words. So it's good to memorize these words because then when you're reading your passage, you can figure out the cause and effect relationship. So if you're reading that bats love caves because it is dark, and then an effect could be as a result of loving the darkness of the cave, when bats see light, they fly away. So that's a silly example, but I'm just giving you how it would be if you're supposed to see these words. So these are just examples to clues that will help you to find out the cause and the effect in a passage. So that was the end, guys. We did it. We made it through this video. Thank you so much for staying through the end. My voice is probably boring, but I have to let you know the good things, the good information. This will at least help you to know what, or give you a little idea of what competency one is. This is not the, I repeat, this is not the whole exam. This is just competency 1. The reading exam has, I don't remember how much competencies, but if you go through my previous videos, you will see how much competencies it has. Thank you so much for staying right to the end. Please go ahead, if you have not checked out my other videos and you are about to take the GKE reading, please like this video, leave a comment if it has helped you, subscribe most importantly, and go check out the other videos which can be of good help to you guys. So if you like the type of content that I'm making, comment down below the other types of videos. If you're interested in me doing competency 2, 3, and the other ones, I'm not sure if there are other ones, I don't remember what. Please leave a comment below if you are interested. Please don't be scared. Subscribe to my channel. Encourage me to make more videos like this. And you guys are not liking the videos, please like the videos for me, please. And share with a friend if you know someone who is about to take the GKE reading. So thank you very much for tuning into my channel. If you have tips on, if you have other tips on stuff that I discussed, feel free to comment down below what your knowledge is of what I discussed. Once more, thank you once again for tuning into my channel, everything educator related. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.